Hey guys, welcome back. More CI5 play-ins content here, and we have moved over from the Aqua bracket, where Java and Roses were, over to the Magma bracket. The first match that I've gotten to cast out of this bracket, and this is a doozy. This is one of the most anticipated matches of the round for sure. It is fan favorite SEA, Super Epic Ampharos, against Finchinator, the veteran, the guy that everybody likes to rag on, give a hard time to, but the guy that everybody respects and obviously knows how good this player is. These guys stylistically, I think, are very opposite. I think that Finch is a kind of a plain Jane, if you will, keeps it very standard, kind of boring, pretty safe, and doesn't really get too far off the conventional path. And there's nothing wrong with that. That style works for a lot of players. SEA, on the other hand, not at all afraid to get creative, get a little gimmicky, bust out some unconventional stuff, and his team compositions do not always look, in fact, often do not look bog standard and boring, yada yada. So I think these guys have very different approaches to the game. This is the CALLOUS Invitational debut for SEA. Really hasn't been in the scene all that long, to my knowledge, and I really don't know this guy very well, but man, is he popular. He has a very loud cheering section, very, very vocal supporters. A lot of guys really want to see him succeed, and they have made that very well known. But he's drawn quite the tough round one opponent in his CALLOUS Invitational debut. Finchinator has not made a CALLOUS Invitational main event yet, but he has played play-ins before, and he also showed off his ADV prowess, and he plays this tier quite a bit more than most people think. But he also showed off his ADV skills in the Permasand Invitational, which is another tournament that I co-hosted about a year ago, and he did just fine in that as well. So let's get into it. Best of three, one of the most anticipated and hyped ones of the round. Crowd favorite, fan favorite SEA against the veteran Finchinator. Here is game one in the best of three, and we are starting with the nonsense immediately. We have a Polytoad, and not for long. We have a Polytoad who misses Hydro Pump and gets crit on turn one by Finch's lead Hariyama. That is a disaster start for SEA. Brings out the Gimmick Mon, goes straight pump, misses 80-20, and then gets nailed by a crit. And it is not getting any better. Now Skarm is going to miss Toxic on T-Tar only to get Fire Blasted. A one-sided haxy affair favoring Finchinator very early on. This is probably not the way that SEA envisioned his CALLOUS Invitational debut. Rapid spin there is going to get rid of Spikes, so Finch does have the spinner. The Spike's not going to be a viable win condition for SEA if he was trying to claw back into the game that way. This really feels like a disaster start for him through no fault of his own. Misses are going to happen. But man, you've got to think Finch feels great about his position right now. Rachi comes in, that is lefties, against a T-Tar that does not. Protect and Focus Punch, sure. Are we implying that we have a Choice Bander here, perhaps? Here's Milo, and there's the switch. So very, very stally team here for Finch. And of note, he hasn't shown spikes on this very, very stally team either. So this could be a long one. We could be in for a bit of a grind here. Very defensive team without spikes as a win con. I guess he's going to be relying on just grinding the other guy out, getting some toxics in, getting knockoff on with Hariyama, whatever. Maybe you land a burn with Jirachi, all that kind of stuff. Residual damage that apparently does not include spikes. Now, the last poke could be a spiker for Finch, but I think it's probably just a Dugtrio, given what I've shown, given what he has shown. It also, I guess it could be like a Wishmance or some kind of defensive Salamence. I think that would also play a big role in like dealing with like Heracross kinds of things. It's not as exciting though because he already has a Wisher and Rachi, so like Double Wish doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I think we're just looking at a Dugtrio in the back. And SEA has shown all but one poke. And if not for the lead Polytoad, which is weird and very, very rare, basically non-existent in the tier, his team is otherwise pretty standard, but man, I don't know what the Polytoad wanted to do, and we didn't get a chance to see. It just went for the one Hydro Pump, and then it died. Fire Punch, Leech Seed, respectively, finds a burn. Natural Cure, brings us to meta, and we're back to Hariyama here. So both players do have one unrevealed in the back. Like I said, I think it's Dougie for Finch, and I really really don't know what it's going to be for SEA, to be honest with you. Here's Milo. There's Meteor Mash. That's going to miss. It has really just not been a great game as far as RNG for SEA, but he's trying to do what he can. I think he's really going to have a hard time here, though. I think that SEA's team doesn't have a ton of offensive pressure, and I think that Finch's team is very, very sturdy, as in general. And Spikes are also not going to be a viable win con because the Claydol on the other side. It seems like not a great matchup to begin with for SEA, and it's certainly exasperated by what seems to be pretty one-sided luck, especially on some crucial turns. So really think Finch has this game won largely in the bag. A lot of things would have to go really, really wrong, I think, for that to not be the case. You never count a guy out when he's got an unrevealed poke. It obviously could just be last poke, Coon, Salamence, Lax, whatever. That sets up and just gets there. But pending him on like that, pending him on that can just set up and totally sweep the game, I think this is going to be a tough one for Finch. Or for SEA, rather. Tough one for Finch to lose. There's Focus Punch. Crits are cool. We know it's not a DD-tar, so that's not going to sweep. We do believe it is a Choice Bander here. Like I said, this could go long. These are not the most offensive teams that I've ever seen, but the inevitability really does feel heavily with Finch here. Spikes come down, which is fine and well, but we know there's a Claydol on the other side. There's another Fire Punch coming. 24%, not that exciting. That might be completely uninvested from Finch's Jirachi. Another Fire Punch, for lack of anything better to do, does find the 20% burn. Yes, that is the correct number. Serene Grace. Leech Seed Wish, sure. See who needs it. Hariyama could use it. T-Tar wouldn't mind it. Doll's at a hundo. And Milo, I guess, would take it, but doesn't desperately need it. But the switch is actually to a Pokemon that does not need it in the Claydol. Rapid Spin comes down, and Giga Drain respectively. SEA did not bother with that on the previous turn because the Wish simply would have negated the damage. Might as well save the valuable PP. Here's a switch. We end up with Meta on Rachi here. His leftovers got knocked off, as we saw earlier. And it's going to be a Whiffed Protect as the T-Tar comes in. However, the Protect is going to scout the Choice Band move. Now that we know that it's Earthquake, it's an obvious switch to the Levitate Mon. And SEA is not going to, obviously, Earthquake into the Claydol that he knows is coming. He switches, but he misses yet another Meteor Mash. Just not getting any luck in this match. Not that hitting that match would have been a huge deal, but just as a whole, it feels like SEA is missing a lot and not really catching a lot of breaks. Giga Drain, sure. And Recover. Milo doesn't care that Giga Drain doing nowhere near enough at 31% despite being super effective. Here's Rachi. Like I said, we might be in for a bit of a grind here. Skarm coming in. There's an opportunity to kill that he does not take. And maybe Skarm can nurse itself back to health, but that also doesn't have lefties. So it's going to be, I mean, you would have to do it with Leech Seed, I guess, unless he happens to have a Wish user in the back. Leech Seed and Surf. Yeah, that Skarm does not seem, I don't even know if it's worth healing because the Claydol on the other side is just going to always get rid of your spike. Seems like a whole lot of effort would have to go into healing it with not too much reward because I don't think the Skarm is actually that useful in this matchup for SEA. He goes Earthquake, gets protected against. T-Tar on Milo, here's an opportunity. Make a good prediction, get a crit, do something. There's Double Edge. He did have an opportunity to get a crit there that would have killed the Milo. It didn't come, but you've got to just make plays like that and hope to get there. So now the T-Tar finds itself really low, and the Milo finds itself somewhat low. Leech Seed, Toxic, respectively, sure. Yeah, I mean, maybe if one of the guys starts playing aggressively, they can pick something off on the way in, like right now. But nope, couldn't pull the trigger. Could have killed the T-Tar there had he just gone for an attack. And now the T-Tar is going to get a kill. And it is, in fact, the last poke Dugtrio that I thought it would be for Finch. So that kill is actually just a trade. It's the weakened Hariyama for the weakened Tar. It's a fair trade. And it's last poke Arrow for SEA. Clicks Earthquake here. That's going to be met with a Claydol, but not until he does 66% to the T-Tar. Skarm dies to Psychic on the way in. Progress being made. Not looking like a 200-turn game as it did at one point. 5-3. There's the Rachi and the meta. Sure. Protect. And he just goes for a mash. We know that he's got Earthquake, but he doesn't do that here. He goes to Aerodactyl. There's Wish. He can just protect again. He instead is going to go for Earthquake and fish for a burn with Fire Punch, respectively. Doesn't get it, but Wish is going to bring him back to almost full health anyway. There's Celebi. There's a Whiff Protect. Seems very, very difficult for SEA now that all the cards are on the table, now that we know what everything is. It seems very difficult for SEA to win this game. Maybe if he could somehow kill the Jirachi, such as with a Meta Boom or whatever, maybe the Aerodactyl can get there. But even that seems really unlikely, given the health of everything on the other side, given the resistances. It just seems like a really tough game for SEA to win. This just hasn't been his game from the outset. The turn one was really bad, and it just set the tone for the rest of the game. He's never been able to catch up. It seems like a bad matchup to begin with, because SEA's team is relatively passive, does not have that much offense against a really, really sturdy team from Finch. And yeah, I mean, when it's not a great matchup to begin with, which, like I said, I think Finch has a favorable matchup here. That plus bad luck, it's just really hard. And it has never, to me, felt like SEA was really, truly in this game. He's not conceded. He's going to play it out, which is his prerogative. But really, truly, how does he win, especially with the Dugtrio on the other side at this point? I think we're just going through the motions here, which is, like I said, his prerogative to do. But I can't imagine any other outcome other than a Finchinator victory in this game. Protect, sure, and Earthquake. Maybe if it were a Jill Gross, but it's not. Claydol comes in on Earthquake. Yeah, I mean, with it not being a Jill Gross, the Dugtrio is just going to revenge whatever poke happens to be remaining. I mean, Claydol here could just boom and just guarantee a kill with Dugtrio in the back. And that's exactly what happens here. So here's a guaranteed kill. There's the Dougie. There's Earthquake. It's going to leave. I mean, he can protect all he wants, but it doesn't matter when he has no lefties. Second one happens. Sure. You just have like 14 or so of those to go. Odds are pretty good. There's the Earthquake. And here is the Celebi. Last poke. Dugtrio will just pick it off at some point. It can also be easily PP stalled out at this point. Maybe SEA is one of those gentlemen who just never concedes, but it's okay to concede. You're not disrespecting me. All right, there we go. That'll speed it up. The Toxic makes it absolutely done deal here. Goes to fodder off the Tar. Ends up being HP Fire instead of Giga Drain, so he gets a little bit of value out of it, but it really doesn't matter. We're simply going through the motions. Finally, SEA is going to type GG, but I think it's been GG for a little while now, just making a formality of it. Protect, HP Fire, sure. None of these turns matter. We are just going through the motions. It's not possible for Finch to win at this point. Hidden Power, Wish, yup. He just has to click Protect, and the Toxic will do its job, and that is in fact what happens. So going through the motions however many turns later, finally Finch does get this one. Like I said, never felt like SEA was really truly in this game or was ever really making a meaningful comeback. Seemed like a good matchup for Finch. Good match, good luck. Makes it pretty straightforward. Finch is going to win this one pretty comfortably. But it's a best of three, as you guys know. SEA capable of making the comeback. Going to have to rattle off 2 in a row against Finch, or he, to the disappointment of many in the crowd, is going to be eliminated. So let's see if he can do that one game at a time. In order to get to game 3, you must win game 2. And here it is. SEA, Super Epic Ampharos on the bottom once again. Finch on the top. T-Tar and Salamence respectively. And it's a turn 1 Protect from the T-Tar. Interesting. So now Toxic comes down from Rachi. It's going to be the second game in a row that Finch is rolling with the Toxic Jirachi. And he switches it up to Fire Punch on the switch. So good little start for Finch. Gets the Toxic down. Gets a free Fire Punch off. Doesn't find a burn. Nor does he find it on the second time. but he is chipping away at the Scarm pretty consistently. Finch has opted for a 4E squad this time, and he is not going to like what he sees on the other side. That is a Moltres, which 4E is obviously not going to stay in to take a flamethrower. And that flamethrower is going to burn its target, which ends up being Blissey. She's down to 56% as Tar comes in. Soft-boiled is going to obviously make her much, much healthier. But now T-Tar has a free opportunity to do whatever it is he might want to do. It's actually a double back to Moltres, however. Probably hoping Fortress or Jirachi comes in, but that is not what occurs. Finch opts for counter, which obviously doesn't do anything on a switch. Interesting turn there. But this should push the Moltres out, nevertheless, especially now that we've seen T-Wave. Moltres really doesn't want to eat that. T-Wave is now going to whiff on a previously unrevealed Swampert. Blissey back down to 51%, and now Focus Punch comes down in case she soft-boiled, which she wisely did not. Fortress comes in, eats the Focus Punch a lot better than Bliss would have, 23%. Surf there is a crit for SEA, however, so Fortress in dire straits after getting down just the one layer of spikes. Now Rachi comes in, that takes the Surf okay, but this is looking like an offensive Pert, and very well may have Earthquake here, which Finch apparently is not concerned about. He's just going to go for Wish. Now Calm Mind from SEA, revealing his own Rachi. Unreveals on both sides, still 2 for Finch, 1 for SEA. Calm Mind Fire Punch. T-Tar comes in, and there is a sub. Popular set this play-ins. The substitute 2-attack Rachi, usually Thunderbolt or Thunder plus Ice Punch. But obviously Rachi can have a lot of things such as Fire Punch, HP Grass, Psychic, whatever it may be. There's another Calm Mind, and there's a Para for Finch at a bad time. Thunderbolt here, 48%. Fire Blast needs a crit or burn here to really be effective. Doesn't get either one. And Thunderbolt is going to take the T-Tar out, leaving us in a 5-6 position with SEA in the lead. And that's going to force Finch to reveal his last poke, Aerodactyl. Clicks Double Edge here. Does more than nothing to Scarm, but not by too much. Doubles back to Men. Spikes layer number 2 comes down. That's going to leave the Fortress officially dead for Finch, I believe. Yep, 15%. That will not survive when he comes in on the spikes. So we are effectively looking at a 6-4 situation with SEA in the lead and looking pretty good to send us to a game 3 here. Moltres comes back and finds itself against Jirachi. Protect and Flamethrower, respectively. We know that Rachi is toxic, which is a threat to Moltres, but is he willing to eat a Flamethrower in order to make that happen? He's going to fodder off the Fury, and that's going to get the Aerodactyl in for free, but it's a Protect Moltres, which is going to scout the Choice Band move, and now that he knows it's Rock Slide, that's really not so scary with the 2 Rock Resists in the back. He's going to go to Skyrim instead. Finds himself against the lead Salamence from Finch. Double back to Moltres, and there is a Fire Blast, which is the only thing that he's shown. Obviously, it doesn't do a lot against the Moltres. He's going to eat a Will-O-Wisp here. Not ideal. Switches it up to Dragon Claw, 46%. Moltres we know is faster, but they never carry HP Ice, so Ment's not in danger here. Swampert comes in. Dragon Claw, if he has HP Grass, which is a hard prediction to make. He doesn't pull the trigger and make that prediction here. Protect. And he goes for Roar, so maybe he doesn't have HP Grass. The burn continuing to affect Salamence here. Skarm comes in. That gets Dragon Clawed, but he takes it very well, just 18%. This one's looking very good for SEA. Neither of these games so far have been particularly close. Finch winning the first one pretty handily, and this one pretty much all SEA. Finch had a decent little start. He was probably ahead in the first 4, 5, 6 turns or so. But ever since then, doesn't really feel like he's been particularly ahead or been in a position where he's threatening to come back or whatever. SEA has really controlled this game nicely, and Finch hasn't had much of a response to it. He does manage to kill the Jirachi here, but again, the ever-present threat of the Moltres continues. Protect, sure. He does still have a Blissey, but it's at just 51%, and there's the spikes down. Here's the arrow switch. Comes in on a Flamethrower. It's about as good as it's going to be. 29% is what he takes. He's going to scout the choice band move once again. Turns out to be Rock Slide once again. And Moltres obviously not going to stick around to take that. Jirachi ends up being what eats it for 23%. Now at 27, should survive another pending a crit or a flinch. And simply goes for Calm Mind here as the opposing Rachi comes in. There's Sub, hoping he can't break it. Fire Punch does not break it, even though it's super effective because he is in fact at +1. And now Thunderbolt coming down, 35%. Follow-up Fire Punch is obviously going to break it, leaving Rachi unable to make another sub at just 21%, so he goes offensive. And 21%, yep, Fire Punch is going to be good enough. So Finch mounting a comeback here. What was a 6-4 game is now a 4-4 game. The plot thickens as Finch tries to come back here. Moltres getting harder and harder to switch into. Aerodactyl can only do it so many times, and he's got to be worried every single time about the Will-O-Wisp. And there's also the fact that Protect can get clicked every time, and you'll always know the Choice Band move, which this time is double-edged, so SEA switches accordingly to his only remaining normal resist, that being the T-Tower with both the Scarm and the Rachi down. T-Tower still poisoned from earlier, but he gets a DD off anyway. That's going to be probably a pretty big threat to Finch right now. He's going to have to stall that out for poison. He's going to lose the Salamence in the process, and now Aerodactyl comes in. He's faster, and Protect is interesting here. SEA is going to choose to take a lot more poison damage, but he knows the move that Finch is going to be locked on, which is once again Rock Slide. Brings us to a 3-3. Swampert comes in, gains lefties. There's a Surf on Bliss, takes just 10%, but she is very low right now at 24%. Focus Punch coming down, hoping there's a Soft Boiled, but Finch is going to be bold and go for S-Toss. That's the right play, disrupting the Focus Punch. Can he make the right call again? Focus Punch, Soft Boiled respectively. Focus Punch nailing her in the face for 60%. Finch not able to call it twice. And now Surf, no, short. It's going to do just 10%, but it's going to be good enough with the sand, and Blissey is going to go down. It leaves us in a 3-2 situation. Things getting low all the way around. This game ended up being much closer, it seems, than I thought it was looking. Finch has managed to crawl back in it, and he's got a chance to win here. Rachi back up to 91% after eating its own wish. Here's Aerodactyl. Comes in on Will-O-Wisp finally. That is poor. He may or may not have survived another Flamethrower. I think almost certainly he would have. But the Will-O-Wisp is very crippling here. Not just for the attack reduction, but for the residual damage. Aerodactyl is on its last legs here. And now Jirachi is basically the last hope for Finchinator. Will that be good enough, or are we going to a third game? Toxic and Thunderbolt respectively. 21% not bad, but killing the Rachi isn't the issue here. The issue is, can Finch, with the Rachi, kill the 3 pokes for SEA? And that's going to be a tough task. Not an impossible one, but a tall order, to be sure. Especially if PP starts to become a factor here. Flamethrower, big chunk at 77%, and an unlucky Toxic miss for Finch. That makes his already improbable comeback almost impossible, and Finch thinks it is impossible because he's going to concede right then and there. SEA manages to hold on. This game, like I said, ended up being closer than I thought it was going to be, but SEA is going to force a Game 3, and now Finch is going to have to get the game in order for him to continue. Same for SEA. Winner takes all, loser out. Who will advance to the round of 4 in these play-ins, and who is going to be eliminated out the gate? We're going to find out together in Game 3. Here it is, and we'll switch sides one more time for continuity. SEA for the third and final time on the bottom. Finch on the top. Venusaur T-Tower lead and an immediate sleep powder. There are talks in the ADV community about people who want to ban sleep. There are also a lot of very high-level ADVers who think that Venusaur blows. I don't personally share that opinion, but it is a fairly common opinion, so what do I know? Nevertheless, the sleep is nowhere at the moment because it found Bliss and nothing else. And here's a Charizard coming in for SEA against Skarm. He did get spikes down, but there's a Charizard. That is a threatening Mon. It goes Fire Blast on my Lotic and whiffs. That is unfortunate. Now Venusaur comes in, and there is a Surf coming. And Finch jokingly says, please have Blastoise too, since he's got both Venusaur and Charizard. Why not? He does go for the Sleep Powder. It's going to miss on Doll. And now Bliss comes in again. That's going to connect with Sleep Powder, but who cares? Venusaur not a big threat to Bliss unless it happens to be the extremely rare physical Venusaur set. It does in fact learn moves, believe it or not, like Swords Dance and Earthquake. So it has like an okay physical move pool with like that and Sludge Bomb or whatever. But that set basically doesn't exist, and it doesn't seem to be a thing here. He does finally land the Sleep Powder on something other than Blissey. That was the Claydol. Now Blissey finds itself against Zard. Beat Up coming down. A janky ladder tech that is actually going to be pretty hefty here. It's going to leave the Bliss at 29%. Or is that 25? My eyes are so bad. That's 25%. Man, that Beat Up did a ton. And Finch with a lot to say about it in the comments there. Man, that leaves the Bliss in shambles. The Charizard with the Beat Up, it's so janky, but it's pretty effective here. I don't like that play from SEA. His meta was so healthy. He did not need to boom there. That felt very premature to me. Maybe he is really worried about the Milotic and specifically wanted to remove that Pokemon. I don't know what he's got in the back, so maybe that was the right play in theory, but it just, man, it felt really early. It felt like he didn't need to do that there. We'll see how it plays out, but as it stands, Finch has the lead after getting the revenge kill with the previously unrevealed Dugtrio. Finch's team, as it seems to be, pretty standard. He's got himself a 5-4 lead, but it looks to be pretty temporary as a Gyarados on the other side begins DDing up against him. Taunt just in case, and Finch obliges. There's the Drill Peck. Trying to go blow for blow here. Hidden Power. Neutral, so you've got to say that's HP Rock, right? Because HP Flying would have been resisted. So HP Rock Gyarados here is going to find itself against my Lotic at 38%. Earthquake, immediate crit, really bad crit too. Man, he didn't even taunt there to prevent Toxic. He just went straight for the attack. That was a really relevant crit because if you don't crit there and Toxic lands there, Milo can just hit recover a bunch of times and it's totally fine. That was a mess. I don't like that at all. SEA got bailed for sure by getting a crit and having the Toxic miss, which is just a disaster turn for Finch, but I think you're supposed to taunt there if you're Gyra. I think SEA did not play that correctly, but happened to get lucky anyway, which has got to be frustrating for Finch. That was a disaster turn, the crit and the Toxic miss respectively. But there's a DD Mence in the back for SEA, which is, I think, looking actually really good to clean up. Finch does not blow on it there. Maybe he doesn't have Explosion, or maybe he knows that he doesn't kill because of Intimidate, but what does Psychic do? What's the point? And now he's going to go to Dugtrio? He's just going to instantly die to the +1 Mence. And he's just going to concede just like that. Man, that whole game, I think, came down to that Milotic turn, which was just really unfortunate. It's the kind of game that just really tilts people with this game, because I don't think SEA played it correctly, but he got rewarded anyway. I think you're supposed to taunt there. The way that was supposed to play out is with SEA clicking the attack instead of Toxic, what was supposed to happen there from Finch's end is he attacks. It does, 40%, I believe, something in that general vicinity. The Toxic lands, and then the Milo just clicks recover a bunch of times, and the crisis is averted. It leaves Finch with a healthy Milotic and the Gyarados on its deathbed, soon to die from the Toxic, and he would have been probably fine, especially if it's an Ice Beam Milotic that then would have been able to handle the Charizard and the Salamence. So I think Finch actually had a really good chance to win, if not for that one sequence, because the Milo just would have been a nightmare for SEA. But the way that it played out, man, that was just such a big turn. He goes for the attack instead of the taunt, which again I don't agree with, but he goes for the attack. He gets the immediate crit. The toxic miss, I guess, doesn't matter after the crit. It's just insult to injury, but the crit is the biggest thing. And from there, I mean, the crit just opened it up. So either the Gyra or the Mence, or I guess in this case, both of them in conjunction, is good enough to clean it up. So SEA is going to get this one, and like I said, he's got a lot of people rooting for him. He's a crowd favorite, so I don't think most of you guys are going to be disappointed with this outcome, and I'm not either. The outcome's the outcome. I don't care who wins. I'm a neutral host, but I don't love that one specific turn. It just felt so crucially important. I really think SEA should have taunted, and I really think he got rewarded for making the wrong play, which has got to be frustrating. Finch seems to handle it fine. But that's a tough way to go out. Nevertheless, that is what will happen. He'll go out. And SEA is going to defeat Finchinator 2-1 here, and he is going to advance to play the yet-to-be-determined winner. It's a Sunday match that I'll probably do live. But he's going to play the yet-to-be-determined winner of Water Mess and Cyber Odin. So no matter what, it's going to be a monster pairing. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts on the set in general, and certainly on that one turn that I keep harping on with the Milo and the Gyra. If you guys are enjoying CALLOUS Invitational content, make sure you're in our Discord server, link in the description. Make sure to thumbs up this video, and do consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see all the games from CALLOUS Invitational. They're all going to be here, so you don't want to miss that. Alright guys, thanks for joining me. I will see you tomorrow, probably live, for Watermess and Odin and TDK and Conflict. Great games. Looking forward to narrating those. I'll see you guys then.